Welcome to the Leading Conversations podcast, sponsored by the Excel Leadership Network. On each episode, J.D. Pairing will have conversations with church planting pastors and leaders from around the country. You can learn more about how to connect with Excel at the end of this podcast. Let's join J.D. now and listen in on this leading conversation.
Welcome to another episode of the Excel Leadership Network Leading Conversations podcast. We're glad you're with us today, and we're very glad to have our special guest, Jay Stovall from beautiful Redlands, California, the jewel of the Inland Empire.
The jewel.
Jay, thanks for being here.
Yes. And it's not the jewel because we're here. I just want to clarify. It was already the jewel before, but I'm honored to be here.
Just by the way, you mentioned that when I first met you, that it's the jewel of the Inland Empire. And I've actually asked a number of people who are around SoCal, and nobody has disagreed with that.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, they all say, yeah, you know what? It's a great place. So
That's good. I love that.
Pretty smart. Hey, I want to start by, you've had a pretty interesting last 6 months or so.
Yeah.
Health-wise and house-wise. Tell us about that and tell us how you're doing. Then we'll get into just God's working in your life before that.
Totally. Yeah. So basically, I'll even dial it back a couple months earlier. January 30th, we were commissioned by our church, and we were basically commissioned into the worst season our family has ever experienced. So in February, I woke up in the middle of the night from a freak knee. I bent my knee funny. It woke me up. I woke up the next morning. It was swollen. I find out I must have twisted or dislocated it. So I had a loose piece of cartilage floating around in my knee as a result of it.
You did this while you were sleeping?
While I was sleeping. I wish I had a better story, honestly.
Well, in your dream, you're probably dunking over Kawhi Leonard or something.
Probably. Yeah, probably. And yeah, so I mean, that happened, and then there's a bunch of different events that happened, and long story short, I ended up finally having that knee surgery procedure on July 21st. It's supposed to be a 3-week recovery period. They're just going and removing a small piece. That's it. And 8 days later, I woke up in excruciating pain. I went into the hospital, found out I had an infection. They did an emergency surgery the next day, and they placed what is called a PICC line in my arm, which is like an IV, and it's this line that goes all the way to the tip of my heart. Because of the infection, they had to administer antibiotics, and I had to do that for 3 times a day. So I'd wake up 8 a.m., I'd administer antibiotics, and I'd have to do it over like a 7-minute time frame. I would do it at 4 p.m., and then I'd have to stay up till midnight and do my last dose at midnight. And so I did that for about 5 weeks. But the sad part is I got a reaction to the first antibiotics. Then they took me off of it. Then the infection got worse, and I had to go back into the hospital because then one of the samples showed up in my blood. And when an infection shows up in your blood, it's horrible because it could affect some of your major functioning systems, whether that's your kidneys, your heart, your lungs. And so I had to go back in for another 6 days to be tested. And by God's grace, it ended up being good. They found the right antibiotics while I was in there to treat me. And so the whole time I was actually recovering at my parents' house because a PICC line is serious. Like my kids, as much as I love them, they can't come running up, hugging me or pulling on wires or anything. So I was spending about probably 3 weeks during that span recovering at my parents. And then the day, I get out the hospital, we go to move. I go to move back in with the family with my wife, Tiffany, and 3 kids at the time. And she's pregnant and 38 weeks at this time. And she calls me and says, our bathroom flooded. And we only have 1 bathroom. And we just moved into the city that we're in, planting. And to make a longer story even shorter, it ends up being about a $10,000 plumbing issue. Like our whole backyard, all the piping has to get dug up. Our whole bathroom needed to be renovated. And so in the midst of that, we had to move out. We lived with my in-laws for 92 days. with my in-laws, and we just did it, and waited till our bathroom was done. But I mean, it was the craziest. I mean, I'm giving you such a Cliff Notes version. I mean, in the middle of that time, someone backed into my car, like while it was parked. And so at one point, I had a claim out on my car, my house, and medical. It was wild. It was like the trifecta.
And your wife is having a baby.
And she had a baby. She had a baby. So he's 2 months now. His name is Lennon. He's doing good. And it's funny because every kid that we've named has it, like the name. So Lennon means lover, and every kid, how we've named them, for some reason, it's been so strategic how God has used their name. Like we had our second son, Luca, which is bringer of light, was born during COVID, during a very dark time in our world, and even in some spaces that we were involved in. But Lennon was great because honestly, we really needed to be reminded that God loved us, because we were at a season of our time where our current circumstances honestly didn't feel like God was for us. And I think that was a reality that we had to not look at our circumstances, but look at his character and trust that he was with us and he was shaping us during that time. But it was difficult, man. We had one thing after another. And I'm smiling now and I'm thankful, but we're still not fully out of it. I'm still in physical therapy about 2 times a week. And I actually ended up needing a 3rd procedure because my knee had so much scar tissue.
Oh my goodness.
They had to put me under anesthesia and basically bend and manipulate my knee to break up all the scar tissue. So a normal person's knee range is about 140 degrees to be like a fully healthy functioning person. At the time before surgery, I was only at 75 degrees. And so now I'm at 132 as of my last PT session. So I'm making my way there slowly but surely, but it's a big rebuilding process. That's for sure.
Wow. That's, I know a little more of the story too. That's just incredible. I'm feeling great. I'm feeling
good.
Great. I don't know if I'm going to sleep at night thinking, I don't want to my knee.
Man. Yeah. I don't know what to say to that one, man. Spiritual warfare. I've never experienced anything like it, but.
Well, we're glad you're doing better and you're coming through this seemingly with a pretty positive attitude. And let's back up. Let's go talk about growing up. How did you come to Christ? How did you come to faith in Jesus?
Yeah, so I grew up. So half of my family's Black, the other half is Hispanic. And so on my Hispanic family, there's a big Catholic tradition behind it, a lot of what they do and what they believe. And on my Black side, it is more of a, maybe, I don't even want to say stereotypical, but more of a Black Pentecostal church upbringing. And so, I kind of grew up around different family members with different flavors of religion and spirituality, which I honestly appreciated. I appreciated being able to kind of sit and understand why people believed what they believed. But my parents, they just knew that they wanted to raise me in the church. And my mom knew just how God had led her. It wouldn't be in the Catholic church, that they found like some non-denominational church. And yeah, to be honest, I think a lot of my upbringing was kind of based on this moralistic way of doing life where, man, I just really wanted God to like me, because I knew that, I was in a church that talked about like the rapture every 2 weeks. And so it's like, I want to be on God's good side. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't want to be left behind. That's what's going on in my heart. And so I was like, man, I really want God to like me. And the way I thought he would like me is if I just lived this very moralistic, pleasing life. And that really kind of led me to really honestly perform and people please God. And I didn't quite experience freedom. I was involved at church. Like, I went to church, but I don't think I was really, I don't think I understood the gospel, to be honest with you. I think Christianity was maybe a set of rules I needed to, the whole idea of like, I obey because I am loved. Like, I don't obey to get that love. And probably the crux of my story came from when I was in college. I had got a basketball scholarship to play at a Christian university, and so I thought, I want to do this, like this Christian life away from my family, kind of figure it out for myself. And I got my first big boy job, and I was working for a state park. And at that state park, I mean, it's like, just think state park, JD. It's like I'm in 50 shades of tan. It's like only you can prevent forest fires, like Smokey the Bear. And so I brought hip hop to the state park. That's just kind of how I felt like I was supposed to evangelize there, right? And so I get employee of the summer. Like, this is my first job. This is when minimum wage, I was making above minimum wage, and it was $8.75, right? And so I get the job, I get employee of the summer, and then I get called in this one random day, right, like the week after I got this award. And I start getting questioned by all these state rangers, like hard questioning, like, hey, we noticed there was this day your paperwork was off. And then I'm just like, can y'all tell me what's going on? And then they proceed to tell me that they had arrested two of my coworkers for embezzling money. And these two coworkers just so happened to be the only other two Black people that work there, mind you. So then they say, we know you're working with them. And I'm like, I'm trying to figure it out. Like, in my head, I was thinking, well, do they think because I knew them, I was kind of friends with them, and I was also Black. And so I was like, well, I don't know what to tell you guys. I wasn't working with them. I wasn't doing anything. And then they proceed to say, well, I'm sorry to tell you, but like, we're going to have to take you in. And so they take me in basically because one of my paperwork was off $40. Okay. So they take me in. I go down to downtown Riverside to the jail there. And mind you, I had gotten a scholarship to California Baptist University. So I'm in my CBU Lancers, like, team jersey, getting my mugshot. It's like the weirdest juxtaposition of, like, I'm repping Jesus and I'm here getting my mugshot. And, but this was like, I got the clearest picture of the gospel from being in prison. And I was there for like 7 hours. I was in this small jail cell with like 16 other guys. And dudes were coming in just all bloodied from being in a stabbing match. And I'm sitting here like, God, how did I get here? And this is a one time in my life where I really felt like God was audibly telling me that making him Lord of my life meant that there was no compartmentalizing who I was in different spaces. And it meant all obedience. And it meant, even though it meant all obedience, it didn't mean that I was going to do it perfectly. It meant that I was going to continue to practice the way of Jesus until I was formed into deeper into his character and into his love and image. And it really dawned on me. And I made a promise to God that night that I would pursue that holistically. And the clearest picture of the gospel came when I was bailed out. And if you ever get the chance to meet my dad, at the time, he was a little bit bigger, so he looked like Suge Knight. He's a famous gangster that people think killed Tupac. And so I'm more afraid of my dad, honestly, than being in jail. And it's like, I'm feeling so much shame because I'm like, my dad didn't raise me to be this way. Now I'm just another statistic. And I remember walking down like this long hallway, and my dad is at the end of the hallway. And I'm so nervous, JD. I'm just like, my dad, I feel so much shame walking down this hallway. I feel so much guilt. And I remember my dad embraced me in that moment with open arms. And he said, son, I don't need you to tell me what you did. I don't need you to, I don't need to know the circumstances. All I need you to know is that I love you. This doesn't change the way I see you. And I'm willing to walk with you if you can just trust me that I will help you out. And it was the clearest picture of the gospel to me, because I brought my sin, I brought my shame, I brought my guilt. And I always kind of had this thought, like when I messed up, that God looked at me with closed arms, like, come on, man, like, you got to get it together. You should know better. And what my father did in that moment is he showed me that the gospel, Jesus's arms were open, waiting for me to come. And not because of anything I could do, not because of my performance, but just of what he did on the cross. And so I can trust in him. And so that was the moment that really solidified my faith, I would say, to a deeper level of understanding of what it meant to believe in Jesus, believe in the gospel, and then just be discipled and make other disciples. So that was kind of the crux of my faith journey. And from there on, it was just all uphill, I guess.
That's an amazing story. I guess you the charges were dropped. You were.
Oh yeah, I probably should say. I probably should. That's another God story, man. Yeah, the lady that I met with, she couldn't believe it, but I was charged with a felony, and it immediately got dropped to a misdemeanor. And to get a lawyer who actually is not a public defender who will, know your name, it was about $50,000, and she knew it would get dropped to a misdemeanor, and she just loved it. Like, she loved our family. God really just helped us find favor with her. So she only charged us $5,000. And a year later, all the charges were dropped, and I was found innocent by God's grace. So yeah, man, it was a crazy journey. It was a crazy journey.
Wow. So that sounds like that was part of your call to ministry as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, because after that, I actually stopped playing basketball. I felt like my identity was wrapped up in performance. And so being a basketball player, I mean, you're part of a team, which is good, but you're also you're practicing, and there's a performance, there's a game, there's something that you're trying to accomplish. And so for me, I knew that so much of my who I was kind of created to be was wrapped in that. And the craziest thing was I actually gave that up. And 2 years later, I found myself on a mission trip to Malaysia. And in Malaysia, the goal was that we were going to use basketball as a means to share the gospel. And so I was putting on basketball camps. I was playing against kids in local villages, local state teams, high school teams. And it was crazy that the thing God took out of my life that really was an idol for me at the time became a vessel to share the gospel. I remember vividly, the first time I ever shared the gospel was after a basketball game. The first time I ever saw someone come to Christ from me sharing the gospel with them came after a basketball game. He was a young Muslim kid, about 18 years old. And I shared with him 3 times. And he told me that, man, I would love to follow this Jesus. But the thing is, my family will ostracize me. I will not be allowed back into my mom and dad will not allow me into the home. And he's like, can I just do both? Can I just do this? And I just had to tell him, like, you can't. And so 2 days before we leave on this trip, he comes to me and he says, Jay, I've never felt this type of peace. I've never felt this type of love. And I want to follow Jesus. And I got to lead him to Christ. And I just remember, man, God, if I can do this the rest of my life, I would love to. And that moment was kind of like the solidifying moment when I first saw someone come to Christ through just my obedience to share and be bold. It was kind of no turning back, honestly, from that moment.
Incredible. That's so cool when you give something up for God and He gives it right back in a better way than you could.
Totally.
Talk about, how did you get connected with church planting?
Yeah, that's a good question. Never in a million years would I ever think about, or have I ever thought about church planting. In 2019, our pastor at Vantage Point Church in Eastvale, Mark Lee, approached me. My wife and I, we felt called to serve the young adults in our church. And so when we wanted to do a small group, and then we found out like 80 people signed up, and it's like, we kind of low key have a ministry now. And we just felt called to just steward the young adults. And so we created a young adult ministry. And I'd always, like from that time from prison, I'd always kind of I dove deep into the local church. And so I was serving in different capacities at Vantage Point. And we were sitting at Panera, and Mark Lee asked me, he said, Jay, would you ever consider planting a church? I see something in you that I would love you to just consider. And I said, no, I never thought about it. Thank you. I mean, I'm honored that you would think that. And that was in 2019. And then when 2020 hit, I just began, like, I always kind of had a burden, but it became more concrete when 2020 hit, because that was when you had so much racial tension. You had so much division, I think, within the church, choosing political sides. And there was just so much within politics that just ruined, I think, a lot of people's view of the church and who Jesus is and what the kingdom should be about. And I just began to have this burden. And I asked the Lord in one of my prayers one day, I said, God, I have at that time, I had 3 young kids, and I was just thinking about the future of the church for them. And man, so much of what I experienced and what I personally saw around our circles was churches being more concerned with their brand, really churches growing, but not advancing the kingdom. I think people get that mixed up. It's like, man, what are we doing to reach people for Christ and not just taking people from other churches because we claim some sort of political statement? And so for me, I just said, God, whatever it looks like, I just want to be on the front lines of the future church. Like, I just want to be on the front line. So whether that's taking a different role at Vantage Point or church planting, like just make it known. And so Tiff and I, we talked to about 3 to 4 mentors, people who have discipled, invested in us. We took about a couple months and we just sat in the weight of what does it mean to plant a church? And for me, be a pastor. Because at this time, you started seeing pastors and people from these major platforms just begin to start falling. And it's like, God, I know they didn't probably get into it for, thinking that would happen. So I want to check my motives. Like, what do I just want to be the Instagram pastor? Do I want a platform? Like, what are my motives, like true motives getting into this? And man, I just had people speak into it. I asked people about my blind spots. Like, do y'all think I have the character? Because I mean, when you read through the qualifications of the elders, leaders in the church, like 99% are all character driven. And I wanted to see if I had the character to do it. And when all those people close to us affirmed it, and we went through an assessment for church planting and got the green light, it was like, okay, now this was God using the body of Christ to affirm this calling that I felt and that our family felt like what we were going to pursue. And so that was kind of how, God took us on a journey to actually decide, yeah, we're going to plant this church.
I want to ask you about Redlands. And it's kind of silly, but I think I may have told you my Redlands story.
Oh, I want to hear it.
Well, when I was a kid, my uncle was I think he was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. He signed up to go back to Vietnam, which was just crazy. Nobody did that. He was a PhD. They didn't want him to go, but he decided to go. And his wife and my cousins, they actually moved to San Bernardino to just be near family. We were in the Orange County, other cousins in the Claremont area. So we were pretty close the time he was in Vietnam. And one time I went and I stayed with my aunt. I have a cousin who's the same age as me. And she said, oh, hey, on Wednesday, we're going to the Redlands Bowl. And I'm like, great. I'm not a real big bowler, but I can go bowling, Well, we get there and it's an opera.
Yeah, totally.
And it's outside. And my cousin and I are like, oh, you got to be kidding. We are not doing this. So we went to the car. He had a football in there. And we started tossing the football around. And we're tossing it around. And it's bouncing and it's rolling in front of the stage. And we spent the whole time just playing football, which is one of my just my tips for life is if you're going to go to an opera, bring a football. I mean,
you're going to go to an opera, bring a football. That's amazing.
That's the only time.
That's a big area too.
Huh?
That's a big area. Redlands Bowl is not small.
Oh no, but we were throwing the ball pretty far. So I mean, It was just I couldn't believe. You're kidding. You're taking what were we? 8, 9, 10 years old. Anyway.
Wow.
How did you get to Redlands?
Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, I got a lot of bad advice on how to pick a city. And a lot of that advice was kind of the way I would summarize it. It was really kind of man-powered advice, meaning that I don't think it's bad. But honestly, I don't think it's bad to want to plant in a city that a lot of people are moving to. And there's going to be kind of this big economic push over that. Like, I think it's necessary to go to places where there's going to be a lot of growth in population. They're going to need churches there. But what I was feeling called to, and a pastor put it perfectly for me one day, he said, Jay, you want to go to a church, you want to plant in a city where only God could be the one to write the story for how that church would come to fruition. And I was between Redlands and another city, actually Menifee, that is booming. Like it is booming. It would not like it. I personally don't think, like, at least when we were coming in, like we were coming in the mindset like, oh, it would be fine to plant in Menifee. It's booming, tons of young families, like they're going to need churches. But everything that why we were picking that area was based on strategy from us. And like, we could almost write that story because that was like our sending church's story. And we drove through Redlands numerous amounts of times. And on the south side of the freeway, there's a lot of churches. And not just like Christian churches. I mean, you got one of the biggest Mormon temples. You got like Church of Scientology. So there's organized religion is known on the south side. But the freeway line serves as a barrier, what I came to find out from people in the community. And so one of the best advice that I got in my church planting journey was, as I engage the city, you need to figure out what are some of the idols of the city. And the only way you figure out what the idols are is you just begin to talk to people. You begin to ask questions like, if you can change one thing about the city, what would you change? What are the things that are making it hard for you to connect and have community in this place? And what I noticed through talking to so many different people was there was an obvious disconnect between the north side and the south side. And potentially even one of the greater idols that I've been exploring is that there is a socioeconomic divide. And so then there's a lot of churches. What I'm trying to say is a lot of churches don't look like the city right now. It is the city is changing. It's getting younger. It's getting more diverse. There's a lot more families. And what I've kept hearing from people is that, man, the churches aren't reforming to look like the city. It's just changing. And so you have a lot of older churches that are unfortunately dying. And I didn't want to come in. I wanted to take that approach because I think it's a poor approach to come in and think, oh, we're going to be the new kids on the block and like we're going to do something different and amazing. And I wanted to take the approach of, man, what were the people here doing before? And what do we sense God is doing here? What are some of the idols in the city? What are things that are harassing the people in the city? And how could the gospel be contextualized to reach them? And so that really helped us formulate a plan to say, man, we want to pick Redlands because we believe God is going to have a great story here on how he's going to take all these people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, because you have a crazy juxtaposition of really wealthy spots and people in some areas. And like, we have communities on the north side that live below the national poverty line. And it's like, these places are 2 miles from each other. And so I just kept talking to people and hearing like, oh, families from the north side, they don't feel comfortable going to the south. And I think probably one of the kickers was I was talking to a lady who runs a nonprofit after school program for that under-resourced side of the city. And she has about 60 families. And I asked her, I said, are these people connected to a church? And she said, Jay, I have 60 families and I have no connection to a local church that I can point them to. And I was like, well, I mean, what about your church? You're a Christian, and she was like, honestly, our church didn't embrace the socioeconomic divide. Like, it's just, the church was too uppity. I don't even know how you want to describe it. They were just too high class, whatever that is. And there was such a crazy, weird tension, and the people didn't feel comfortable stepping into their church. And so when she told me that, and she's like, I have 60 families, I have no one to point them to. I was like, God, if we could just be a pastor to these blocks, let's do it, because there's these tons of neglected communities because of their social class, their skin color, and when I see Jesus's tables and who he's ministering to, these are people on the margin, and these are people at his table that could do nothing for him. And so I just wanted us to be in a spot where we could not come in and, build on somebody else and what they're doing, but come into some soil that I've heard stories of people who have who are reaching this north side of the community, who are trying to do the work. And so how could we link arms with them and hopefully advance the kingdom because there's been plenty of people who have really kind of plowed the soil, and we could potentially be some of the beneficiaries of some gospel fruit. So that was really a big deal for us. I mean, there's 45 different countries represented on the two closest universities that are right next to us. Esri is a global mapping, like the largest global mapping. Like anytime you're GPSing or anytime there's a national natural disaster and they have all the heat warming stuff, that's Esri, and they hire globally. And so we have a big population from Saudi Arabia, India, and it's like, man, I want our church to look like the nations, not just like how you see it, but even culturally, how we kind of operate as a church. And that was something that I didn't quite see. And so I pray that that's who we could be.
Well, that's really, really cool. I'll give you one tip is bring a football.
Bring a football, man. Bring a football. But see, here's the thing. It's so diverse. They're not going to know if I'm talking about football or football. So
whatever one you want to bring. So, hey, that's my tip. Let me ask you last question. What's a leadership tip you'd have for people who listen to this podcast or leaders? What's your leadership tip for us?
Yeah. Oh man, that's a great question. There's so many that are coming to mind. I'm just going to give you the first one that comes to mind for me that I've had to learn, I think, on a much deeper level is be okay being seen as weak. Be okay being seen as weak. I mean, and I think when you're able to do that, you can bring your person and you don't have to bring some persona. Because to be honest with you, that like, I have never felt this weak in my entire life, not just physically, but even emotionally. I think God has met me on a crazy spiritual level in some senses, but even before God, I've just felt really depleted and weak. And it's one thing to say things like, in our weakness, like He is made strong, or things like, count it all joy when you go through various trials, because the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. But I think I wish I had, and maybe this is just my issue, but I imagine like more people need leaders around them who are being okay being seen as like a healthy version of weakness, that there's vulnerability there's like authenticity there. And man, I have been surprised at how that has been able to help me become a better leader, not just in our home, right? Because I have this, like, I always kind of had this, like, I want to look good for my wife, not just physically, but like, I want her to think of me in a healthy way. As like, man, Jay's like I love that he's like the leader of our house, and I love like that he's a father to our kids. But I've realized that a lot of those moments where she feels that way is actually comes from me being honest about how hard life is, or how I'm struggling, and the realities of how I am just dependent on Jesus. And so recognizing that I have nothing to prove, I have nothing to possess, and I have nothing to lose. Like there's something that I think comes from just being able to, there's a sobriety, honestly, when it comes to honesty. And I think, I think for my life, I've realized, oh man, I've kind of like jaded some of those levels of honesty for the sake of like people pleasing or the idol of approval. And so just allowing the gospel to just speak to my life, so that I can be honest when I do feel weak, because I don't think people need to follow a leader who's constantly needs to be seen as having it all together, or constantly needs to be seen as having the answers. And so, I love the, just I'll end with this thought. Like I love when I consider communion now, this picture of Jesus, like taking the bread, like He blessed the bread, and then He broke the bread, and then He gave the bread, and letting that speak to our lives. And even like, as I consider my life, Jesus took me, like He has blessed me, but in order to be given, like I need to be broken. And a lot of people don't recognize, like, man, that broken part, there's some beauty that comes from that. But like, God isn't giving us out as these perfect people. Like He's given us out as redeemed people who have been broken and who are being redeemed and who are being restored and who are being formed into the image of Jesus so that we can be given to the world. And so I've recognized, like, over the last 6 months, God has broken us in a really sweet way so that we can be given to a community that needs a pastor who has greater compassion for people who suffer, who has greater compassion for people with disabilities or life-term ailments, or who are just going through things that don't make sense. And so I've seen how God has used us being broken and weak and having to be honest about that to become greater servants for our future church plant.
That's amazing. It's incredible. Thank you so much for that tip. We've had a lot of tips. I don't think we've had a tip on it's okay to be weak. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to what's going to happen in Redlands, football or no. Looking forward to what's going to happen on the north side of the freeway. Thanks so much for being here, Jay.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks for joining the Leading Conversations podcast. We hope that you found it both helpful and encouraging. At Excel Leadership Network, our focus is on the church planter rather than the church. If you'd like to find out more about us, visit our webpage at excelnetwork.org. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. See you next time with another Leading Conversation.